You're a wizard, Harry. Hello and welcome to Escape from Mount Backlog, one man's quest to defeat his game's library. Today, I was going to do Total War Warhammer, but scheduling kept me from putting enough time into it to form an opinion. That game is way too deep, and not having played a Total War game since Rome 1, I felt it would be a disservice to myself and to you, my viewers. I try to play a significant chunk of every game I cover, and Total War Warhammer required more time than I physically had. So today's game, then, is Warlock, Master of the Arcane. Developed by Inaco Plus and published by Paradox Interactive. Now that alone gives this game some strat cred. Paradox are, after all, a big name in strategy gaming. One of the big three, in fact, as mentioned in the Dungeons 2 video from 2 weeks ago. Link to that video in the description. You know, I can't remember when or why I bought Warlock. I do have a bit of a problem. Was it part of a bundle? No. Was it one of those key giveaways? Anyway, regardless of how I got it, I played it. I will admit I didn't quite finish a game. I got to around turn 200 on a second playthrough, and I'm pretty sure I've got the gist of what this game is, and well, it's Civ 5 with magic. Don't get me wrong, that's not a derision of the game, it's an observation. The units move the same way, the buildings construct in a similar manner, and most glaringly, those hexes, son. Joking aside, of course, hexes have been a staple of strategy gaming for a long time, way before Civ 5 seemed to popularize them. Computer-based strategy games going as far back as Master of Monsters in 1991 used hexes. Possibly even earlier, some argue that the first Nobunaga's Ambition from way back in 1983 also used a hex map. And it's been a favorite of tabletop game designers as far back as the 60s, with games like the second edition of Avalon Hill's Gettysburg often being cited as the first game to popularize the hex map. And of course, you can't talk about a hex map without mentioning the golden child, the gateway to board gaming for most settlers of Catan. Point being, hexes have been a thing since long before Civ 5. With Warlock, you can pick one of several mages, each attached to one of 3 playable starter races, humans, monsters, or the undead, and each mage has predetermined bonuses and starting spells. You can, however, completely customize your mage at the start, so you can basically play any way you want to. You want to be an undead lich emperor who turned to a life of good and uses healing magic to keep his human followers alive? You can. Or you can be a noble rat king of monsters. Hell, you could be a learned orc witch doctor who turns to necromancy and commands an army of the undead. Point is, there are a lot of options to help you really roleplay your mage and empire, something that always appeals to me as a player. The city setup is straightforward. You start with one city randomly placed and can build specific resource buildings on any of the surrounding hexes. Of course, there are special tiles with rare resources that can be exploited, like magic wells that can produce more mana, gold mines which have increased gold production. I even found some pigs for a pig farm. Each game starts with you, your rival mages, neutral cities, I'll get back to those, and roaming monsters on the map, most of which is covered by Fog of War, so you definitely need to go out exploring as soon as possible. To that end, the game starts you off with one basic melee and one basic ranged unit. Monsters mostly spawn from nests and will continually do so until you capture the nest by simply moving a unit over the nest tile, at which point the nest will disappear and give you a reward. This reward can be resources, magical items, or spells, and your life gets a little bit easier. Expanding is arguably easier here than in most games of this genre, as I couldn't on face value see any negatives to quickly expanding and building new cities as soon as possible, nor for taking neutral cities. I couldn't find a happiness mechanic anywhere. So either this game doesn't have one, which is interesting, or it's obfuscated to such a degree that it doesn't even matter. Neutral cities, told you I'd get back to them, are grey, and they can be claimed by any player by eliminating the defending force and taking the city's hit points down to 0. That's it. Simple. So simple, in fact, that the AI monsters can also claim the cities, which is hilarious. I mean, picture a bunch of kobolds just running through the streets.
It's ours! It's ours! Ah ha ha ha! Now what?
Well, the populace just shakes their heads. You do have a very good incentive to target neutral cities, however, as they can be rolled as either human, monster, or undead cities, giving you access to those building options, giving you a clear strategic advantage over your opponents. My favorite combination to use was skeleton soldiers as cannon fodder in the front, with elven archers behind. Skeletons take the hits, archers pick off the enemy. The way this game tackles the tech tree is also different from most 4X incarnations, though I'm not sure it entirely works. You see, instead of one research tree, upgrades have been split into either passive buff spells that need to be researched and continually cast, which costs mana, and specific buildings for certain unit upgrades, like a smithy, or rare resource structures like a silversmith that can only be built on a silver mine. So if you generate a world with few or no rare resources relatively near you, you're shit out of luck. Don't get me wrong, I love the spells, I love being able to cast spells, but I don't like having to continually cast a fertility blessing because the game put my starting city in the middle of a freaking desert. Generally the buff or debuff spells are alright, and the summons are clearly overpowered, purely because the summon units don't time out. I summoned ghost wolves early game, and they wrecked cities until they were finally stopped by a freaking dragon. The attack spells, in my opinion, aren't worth it. They have a high cost to efficacy ratio. I mean, what's the point of building up mana for a fireball that only does 5 damage to a single hex, and you can only cast it once per turn, when I can summon a lasting creature for 50% more mana and time, i.e. it takes a turn and a half. Yeah, I'm just gonna invest in the summon every single time. Of course, the spells you research later can be quite powerful, like the terraforming spells that can change a 7 hex area into a barren wasteland, fertile farmland, or even a volcano, which is great. That was one strategy that I found was quite effective to hamper enemy empires. You find a city, boom, that city is now in a volcano, and the whole game has this tinge of silliness to it. It's almost comical. Your notifications are read off in a specific way, my lord, and some of the sounds are ludicrous. Arrows being fired sounds like a mouth harp. And the unit grunts, mostly from the monsters, are deliberately dad jokey. Yes, that Minotaur did just really say, no bull. It's that levity that keeps me hooked. So here's the thing, the TLDR, I guess. The game has problems, mechanically. Some systems are overly simplified and others are obtuse and impenetrable on a first run. But it's contrasted by the overall silliness of it all. Why would warlocks and wizards fight for dominance using empires as cannon fodder? Why do any of this? Hell, why play this game? Because it hits that sweet spot. You know what I mean. Where you keep saying to yourself, just one more turn. Just one more turn. Until you look up or your phone's alarm goes off and you realize it's 4 AM and you've got to be in the office by 8. That's a compelling reason to play any game. And that'll just about wrap up this episode of Escape from Mount Backlog. Have you played Warlock, Master of the Arcane? Is it stuck in your backlog? Please remember to like this video, share it around, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to see more of me, although not in the flesh or hearing my voice, check out NANUBOT'S channel. I'll put a link in the description. He's currently playing XCOM 2, and I am one of his characters. We'll see how I fare. And another announcement, if you really do like the sound of my voice, you can catch me on a podcast that was launched recently, the CINEBEARDS. New episodes of that will go live every Tuesday, and I'll put a link to the Podiant page in the description below. That's about it. Okay, bye.